Western Australia has also announced its migration plans for 2021-2022. So what has changed in the Western Australian skilled migration for 2021-2022? Now in this video, I'll tell you the three major changes in SUBCLASS 491 and 190 Western Australian nomination for this year, and check whether your occupation belongs to the list that Western Australia can sponsor. I will also explain the new eligibility requirements and the steps on how to apply for SUBCLASS 190 and 491 Western Australia state nomination. Hi, my name is Teresa Cardona. I'm a lawyer and a registered migration agent from SUBCLASS Visa, where we help Filipino professionals, partners, students, graduates, trainees, families, and our kababayans to migrate to Australia. So if you are new here, please click the like and subscribe buttons as well as the bell so you get notified every time there's a new video from me. Okay, so let's start. Now, there are 4 points that you need to know before you approach the Western Australia state nomination. Now, the first point, the state nomination in Western Australia is handled by WA Migration Services. Now, WA Migration Services processes nominations on behalf of the state government. It is not a migration agency, but it is more of a government office assigned to assess the nomination application. They don't give migration advice. It will be up to you to find the things that you need to know. Or maybe you may also want to opt to getting the services of reputable registered migration agents or lawyers to do the job for you. Now, the second point, the Government of Western Australia nominates eligible migrants for any of the 2 available categories, such as the SUBCLASS 190, the skilled nominated, and SUBCLASS 491, regional provisional skilled nominated visa. Now, if you are nominated by Western Australia Migration Services, you will then have an automatic invitation to apply for either SUBCLASS 491 or 190. Now, the third point, the Department of Home Affairs has provided Western Australia with 1,100 places for SUBCLASS 190 and 340 for SUBCLASS 491. Now, this is a small number compared to Victoria and New South Wales that have more than 3,000 places. And because of the limited places, you will have to be precise with what Western Australia is looking for. Otherwise, you may lose your chance of getting invited. And that brings me to my last and important point, and that is Western Australia has recently changed or made some changes in the 2021-22 program. Now, what are those changes? Now, change number 1 is Western Australia introduced a new WA Skilled Migration Occupation List, Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. Now, the occupations on the screen is for Schedule 1. And this list is for Schedule 2. Now, change number 2. Many occupations are now added to WASMOL, including the Schedule 1 and Schedule 2, unlike in the past where it was a small list. So you can see that the list now has been expanded. Now, change number 3. Now, there are separate experience requirements for Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. Okay, so let's unpack these changes. Now, in order for you to apply for Western Australia state nomination, you will need to have an occupation identified on the WASMOL, the Western Australia Skilled Migration Occupation List. Now, WASMOL has 2 streams, now the general stream and the graduate stream. Now, the general stream has 2 schedules, okay, Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. But if you are coming from a student visa and have studied in Western Australia, you will need to look at the GOL, the Graduate Occupation List. This list. So for you to successfully approach SUBCLASS 190 or 491, you will need to understand these new changes. Now, the Schedule 1 and the Schedule 2 are essentially occupation lists. Now, the Schedule 1 list has the following occupations: whereas the Schedule 2 has these occupations. Now, so you will notice that most of the occupations listed in Schedule 1 are available at this time. It is likely that Western Australia will keep on updating this list to inform us whether the occupation is still open or not in the future. You can see those different status. For example, in GOL, or some occupation for Western Australian graduates are closed for nomination. So you will see that the Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 lists are mostly available at this time because Western Australia has just opened. So we expect that the list will be updated as nomination and invitation roll out. So it is important for you to check this schedule on the regular basis so that you know what is open and what is closed. You need to check the status on the list, and in the future some occupation will be tagged as available, meaning occupation is available for nomination invitation, or under review means that occupation is under review and invitations to apply for state nomination will be limited pending the outcome of the review, or close means that the relevant occupation is closed for invitation. So if you're applying for WA nomination, check first if your occupation is available and eligible for your intended visa subclass. But take note that occupation may become unavailable without notice. So if you see your occupation as available, you need to lodge your interest straight away. There's nothing more frustrating when you do all you can, waited for a long time, see your occupation on the list, but unable to lodge because your papers are not ready. And then suddenly when you're ready, the occupation has closed. So what is then the use of Schedule 1 and Schedule 2, and why is it important for you to understand where your occupation is? Now, change number 3 refers to the different work experience requirements for those individuals with Schedule 1 occupation and those with Schedule 2 occupations. So if your occupation is listed on Schedule 1, the following are your requirements that you need to meet. Number 1 is you have to be currently residing in Australia. 2, have an occupation listed as available and eligible for intended visa subclass that you want to apply and that is in Schedule 1. And 3, you have to be able to claim and give evidence of work experience in the expression of interest. Now, if your work experience is an Australian work experience, you will need to show at least 1 year of Australian work experience in the nominated or closely related occupation over the last 10 years. Or, if your work experience is from overseas, at least 3 years of work experience in the nominated or closely related occupation over the last 10 years is required. Now, in addition, you must present a contract of full-time employment for at least 12 months in the nominated or closely related occupation in Western Australia. And lastly, you must meet the minimum language requirement. The English requirement is proficient if your nominated occupation belongs to ANZCO Major Occupation Group 1 and 2. And it's competent for those occupations that belongs to Group 3. So if your occupation is listed on Schedule 2, the following are your requirements. You must be currently residing in Australia. You have an occupation listed as available and eligible for intended visa subclass on the Western Australian Skilled Migration Occupation List, Schedule 2. You have a contract of employment for full-time employment for at least 12 months in the nominated or closely related occupation in Western Australia. And you must meet the minimum English requirements. Now, the minimum English requirement is proficient English if your nominated occupation belongs to ANZCO Major Occupation Group 1 and 2. The English language required test score for those with ANZCO Major Occupation Group 3 is competent English. If you're coming from student visa, the graduate stream, requirements for Subclass 491 and Subclass 190 are 1. You have to be currently residing in Australia. And 2. Have an occupation listed as available and eligible for intended visa subclass on graduate occupation list. And you have gained a Certificate 3 or higher qualification in Western Australia, including a requirement to have completed at least 2 years of full-time study in Western Australia at a Western Australian University higher education provider, TAFE, registered training provider, or English language provider. And you must demonstrate at least 6 months of paid Australian work experience in the nominated or closely related occupation over the past 5 years. Or you have a contract of employment for full-time employment in Western Australia for at least 6 months in the nominated or closely related occupation. So what then is the difference? Schedule 1 occupation requires at least 1 year of Australian work experience with a contract of employment for full-time positions for at least 12 months, whereas those with Schedule 2 occupations are not required to demonstrate the work experience if they have a contract of at least 12 months in Western Australia. And another thing is that you can nominate Western Australia anywhere you are in Australia, because Western Australia does not require a residency in Western Australia for any period, unlike any other state or territories which require residency to be nominated. Now, unfortunately, requirements number 1 for all the streams take out all the offshore applicants, which means that Western Australia is only open for applicants in Australia as of this time. Now that you are aware of the 4 important points and the eligibility requirements for the general and graduate stream for Western Australian state nomination for SUBCLASS 491 and 190, you may now approach or start preparing your SUBCLASS 190 or SUBCLASS 491 application. But before you decide to do anything, take my warning that Australian immigration law is a complex and delicate matter. Do not take it lightly. Get the services of a reputable migration agent or a lawyer to handle the job for you. Okay, now the application process. You can use the 7 steps that I prepared for you, or you can contact us to handle the entire application to make sure that you are doing all this correctly. Okay, so now the first step that you need to do is find out if you meet the requirements set by the Department of Home Affairs. Now, the basic requirement for both SUBCLASS 190 and 491 are you've got to be under 45 years old, must have competent English, must have a positive skills assessment in your nominated occupation that is on the list, and that you have minimum points test score of 65 points. Now, the second step is for you to check or note the opening of the state nomination. Now, Western Australia announced the opening on the 5th of July 2021 with indications of availability on the occupation list. It would appear that as long as there are available occupation status on the list, Western Australia will be open for nomination invitation. Now, the third step is, if you haven't done it yet, submit an eligible expression of interest or EOI in the Department of Home Affairs Skill Select database. If you do not know what EOI is, now check my other video, and you must select Western Australia as your nominating state. Now, the fourth step is to wait for Western Australia to review your EOI. If you are selected, Western Australia Migration Services will invite you to apply for state nomination. And if you are invited to apply, you will receive an email with a link to the state nomination application form, and you have 28 days to complete the application. Now, the fifth step is to respond to the invitation by making an application for the state nomination. Now, in this stage, you will have to demonstrate that you have met all the requirements that I explained a while ago, but you will need to present documents supporting your EOI, including the settlement funds, and you have to pay $200 for the nomination application fee. Now, if your application is successful, WA Migration Services nominates you in Skill Select, and you will automatically receive an invitation from the Department of Home Affairs to lodge your visa application. Now, the sixth step is to submit your visa application to the Department of Home Affairs within 60 days. Now, this is the step wherein you will have to apply for SUBCLASS 190 or SUBCLASS 491 through your EMI account. You will need to pay the visa application fee. Now, the seventh step is the visa outcome. The visa outcome is the last and final step wherein you will know whether your application is successful or refused. Now, if your application is successful, then you will get the visa grant letter. But if your application is refused, then you will get a notification and explanation on why your visa application was refused. Now, those are the 7 steps that you can follow in order for you to make preparation for your 491 and 190. Again, just a piece of warning, state nomination is not an easy process. When it is done correctly, the visa grant can be quick, but when it is messed up, you can lose your time, your money, and opportunity to become a permanent resident of Australia. Now again, timing, knowledge, and experience are crucial to the success of your visa application. So I suggest that you hire a professional to do the entire job for you. If you need any help, you can contact us or book a consultation to know exactly what is best for you. And that's all for today, and see you next time when I discuss the nomination process in South Australia, the only state so far that gives opportunity for offshore applicants at this time. So don't forget to click and like and share, and also subscribe to this channel.